this moment, you belong to the Belgian underground. You must never speak of your work. One word can cost lives. And we silence tongues permanently. When you join us, you'll give up everything. Family, honor, friends, money. They're all secondary. If you think you can't sacrifice everything, including yourself, you can still withdraw.
I'm ready.
All right. Do you swear to submit yourself to the orders of the White Brigade? To obey them without question? To devote all your energies to the liberation of Belgium and the destruction of the German army? To accept the discipline of the White Brigade? And to pay with your life for any betrayal, voluntary, accidental, or forced?
I swear it.
The National Broadcasting Company, in cooperation with the Council on Books in Wartime, presents another program of Words at War, which brings to radio important war books. Tonight we present The White Brigade, a radio play based on the recent book by Robert Goffin. Jean Boucher walks slowly down the streets of Nivelles in Belgium. He's returning home after an unsuccessful attempt to escape to England. Only 18 days and Belgium has been overthrown, destroyed, and bled white. He walks aimlessly through the town. In the middle of what had been a square, German soldiers are taking pictures of their handiwork. Finally, unable to hold back any more from the dreaded moment when he may find that his wife and child are gone or dead, he...
John. Oh, John, my darling.
Denise, the French police stopped me at the border.
Daddy, here's Sam. Here's Sam, Daddy.
Oh, Anne, little one. Oh, Denise.
I've been so afraid, John. So afraid.
I was afraid too, Denise. For you. I didn't know what I'd find here. Thank God.
Yes, darling. Thank God. But what will happen now?
Jean Boucher, is that you?
Yes, Paul. I got your message.
It's good to see you again, Jean. Come, let's sit in front of the cottage here. We've got a great deal to talk over.
Why did you come back, Paul? You must have known that we lost.
Listen, Jean. I have a job to do here. I want to organize real resistance. Give it a head and arms and guidance.
Paul, you're making me hope again. But it's so utterly impossible. We're all slaves now. We'll never know freedom again. What can we do?
Right now, the main thing is to immerse oneself in the German trough.
I'm still a Belgian, Paul.
I know, Jean. I don't ask you to make up your mind now. Think about it. Think of your wife and child. And then see Valentin.
Valentin who?
Just Valentin, that's all you have to know. Be at the Café Metropole Wednesday at 4. He'll know you.
But why don't you tell me who he is? Don't you trust me?
No.
What did you...
Listen, Jean. I wouldn't have asked you to come if I didn't trust you as much as I trust myself. It's a terrible thing to say, but for the kind of work that lies ahead, no one has a right to trust even himself too far.
What do you mean?
Let me explain. The Gestapo summoned me last month. I spent a whole day waiting to be questioned. In the next room, I could hear a Belgian being questioned and tortured. He wouldn't talk at all at first. Then I began to hear cries of pain and shouts of pleasure. I could clearly hear a whip cracking over the poor devil. It went on for hours, till he was shrieking without a let up. Then suddenly there wasn't a sound. And I realized what had happened.
What?
He gave in. And I couldn't blame him. So you see, Jean, we can't even trust ourselves, let alone others.
Yes, I see. You say his name is Valentin? At the Metropole. On Wednesday?
That's right, Jean.
I shall be there, Paul.
Aren't you a friend of Paul Freeman's?
Huh? Oh, yes.
So am I. Let's sit down.
All right.
Over here. I'm Valentin.
I'm Jean.
We have several Jeans already. You live in the Rue Sans-Souci, don't you?
Yes.
Very well. You'll be Jean Souci. Shall we have some beer?
All right.
Waiter, 2 beers.
Yes, sir.
There's good news.
Good news of what?
The Fritzes have tried to invade England and failed.
Ah, good.
See that fat slob over there? 2 tables to the left? Watch him. He's Gestapo.
Uh-huh.
He's one reason I wanted to see you. We need a little information about him. The hours he keeps, where he goes, who comes to see him.
Right.
You see, I'm not asking you for any heroics yet.
That's all right. But how am I to get in touch with you?
We want the news soon. You have till Sunday. Tell Paul whatever you found out by then.
Is that all?
For the moment. Now, let's drink our beer, shall we?
Paul, are there many of you?
Many of whom?
Underground people, like yourself.
You mean the White Brigade? I don't know, but I think several hundred.
How did you happen to call it the White Brigade?
Simple. The Germans formed a black brigade, so ours is white.
But what is the purpose? I mean, these little things...
Jean, our job is to prepare for an Allied invasion. Because I know America will come in. We've got to prepare in every possible way. Incendiarism, sabotage, espionage, murder, whatever helps. We've got to know every move the Germans make, and every move they're going to make.
I see.
But really, Jean, the finest thing of all is this. The Germans have wiped out all the barriers that used to divide us. And Belgians have lost the antagonisms of language, party, and religion. Everyone has the same enemy now.
You see, my friends, we've got it figured out pretty well now. In order to get these English soldiers out of the country, we send a Belgian with each Englishman. A Belgian who fought and wants to join the English army.
What if he stopped?
He tells anyone who might ask the man with him is Flemish.
That's an excellent idea.
Now then, time for the BBC. Will you turn the radio on, Jean?
Yes, of course.
Keep it very low. You ready to take notes for the newspaper, Malibran?
We've got everything right here.
Hello. This is the BBC in London. Radio Belgium is on the air. We are very fortunate tonight in having with us 2 Belgians who have just made a daring escape from the occupied country.
That's Jean-Gilles.
I wish I were with him.
Dumas must be there, too.
Under extraordinary...
What happened?
The radio.
The fuse must have blown.
Look, out this window. What? Down there at the doorway. German soldiers. We're in a trap. How do we get out of here?
Take it easy, Jean. Take it easy. Don't lose your head. Anyone who has papers on him that might cause trouble, swallow them. Malibran, get rid of those notes.
Right.
Oh, yes, one thing more. Set the dial for the German station.
What for?
Are you going to do as I tell you?
All right.
And now, just an added touch to this charming scene. This beautiful piece of paper on which I have written, "We swear our loyalty to our chief, Léon de Grelle. Vive Rex."
That fascist. Where do you want it?
On the radio there. That's fine. Now quiet, everyone. They'll be here in a minute. I know what the rotters are up to. God help the poor devils they catch. They come into an apartment house about BBC time. They cut off the main electrical meter. Radios and lights go off. Naturally, everyone thinks there's something wrong with the current.
That's why you changed the setting on the station.
Certainly. While everyone's waiting for the current to come back, the Germans go through the house. Put a guard at each door so that when the pig in the basement turns the current on again, they can tell who's listening to England.
Not a bad start.
Wait, quiet.
The lights are on.
Heil Hitler.
Heil
Hitler. What's going on here?
Der bedeutende Vorstoß an der Ostfront bringt die glorreiche deutsche Ostarmee...
You listen to a German station. Wunderbar.
vor den Toren Moskaus.
Hey, what's the sign on the radio?
Die bolschewistischen Streitkräfte unter der Macht des deutschen Heeres.
Rex?
Der Führer selbst.
Sind Sie Rexisten?
Natürlich.
Das sind wir alle Freunde. Irgendwie sind wir alle Nazis.
Alles in Ordnung.
Heil Hitler! Everything's all right here.
Wir unserem Führer danken.
You see, Jean, one of our members is a cleaning woman at the Kommandantur. She brought us some seals and wrappings that were on a registered parcel sent from Berlin.
Ah, I'm beginning to see. They'll come in handy.
Yes. We'll wrap up a bomb in them and address it to the traitors de Grelle and his secretary, Jean Oudekerke. We'll tie it up so that one set of string around it will set the bomb off. I hope both our friends will be there to open it together.
Well, what do I do?
We'll get you a postman's uniform, bag too. You'll take the parcel to the building. When you get there, you'll probably be stopped by a guard. Now, when he stops you, you tell him.
I have a registered parcel for Monsieur de Grelle.
But he isn't here.
And then he'll have to pick it up at the post office.
Can't you leave it with me?
No, it's registered. It's from a ministry in Berlin. It must be important. It's addressed to Monsieur de Grelle and Monsieur Oudekerke.
Well, let me have it then. And I'll take it to Monsieur Oudekerke.
I have to deliver it myself and see him sign for it. It's the rule.
All right, then. Come, I'll take you to Monsieur Oudekerke.
Monsieur Oudekerke?
Yes, what is it?
Registered parcel from Berlin, sir.
Good, put it down here, will you?
Would you mind signing, sir?
Yes, give me the pencil.
Thank you, sir.
All right, now get out of here. I have work to do.
Good work, Jean. Oudekerke is dead. 7 men were killed, 7 wounded. There's more work for you to do. This is only the beginning.
These outrages performed by Jews and communists, terrorists and troublemakers must stop. Remember this. The person of every German is inviolate. Any attempt on the life of a German will be followed by swift retribution. Signed, General von Falkenhausen.
They got Marlborough.
They took his wife and child, too.
The German swine are probably cutting into pieces.
So you have nothing to say, you Belgian louse? Why do you keep this up, Marlborough? And you want us here to stay. Why don't you accept it? We Nazis are not savages. All we want is some sign of cooperation, and we'll be your best friends. Tell us what we want to know, and you can go back to your wife and child. They're waiting in the next room now. Well? I think you'll be very sorry that you've been so stubborn. Schultz? Tell them to start on the child in the next room. Yes, I think you'll be sorry you were so stubborn. You fools. Can't keep secrets from us forever.
No, stop. Stop. Leave the child alone. I'll talk.
And who killed the Rexist chief, Marcel Rondeau, in Spa?
I don't know. It was me. I swear it on the life of my boy. I would tell you if I knew. I can't stand anymore. Thank you. Let me die, but promise you won't do anything more to the boy.
Who stabbed the German sentry at Flamalot?
I helped, but I didn't kill Rondos.
No. Who is this leader of yours? He used to be called Soucy. Jean Soucy. Who is he?
I don't know.
Who is he? Come on, answer. Who is this man? What is his real name?
I don't know. I swear I don't know.
We've learned all we can from this one. Take him out and shoot him.
How do you do?
I am Madame Malibran. I saw my husband shot. He asked me to warn you that Soucy must disappear at once if he doesn't want to go through what my husband did.
Malibran. Dead.
Last Thursday afternoon, a Belgian policeman came to tell me I was a widow. He gave me a list of the things that George had left in the prison. I went there yesterday.
Yes.
They aren't just murderers. They're grave robbers. The watch and the ring that I gave my husband when we were married are gone.
Denise, the child doesn't get better. She seems worse. And you, too. I hate to leave you and the child.
Darling, we'll be all right. Please, you must go. You must go.
Yes, perhaps you're right. It's for Anne and children like her. Well, everything is set. I leave tomorrow morning. But, Denise, you must take care of yourself and the child.
Don't worry. We'll have your extra ration card. John! John, the German police. The car. They've just pulled up in front of the house.
Come away from the window, quick. I'll go up to the attic. I'll lock myself in with a duplicate key. You hide the other. Tell them I went away yesterday to look for food. If they don't get me, then when you're sure they're gone for good, knock on the door. And I'll know it's all right to come out.
All right. But hurry. Be quiet. My little girl's asleep.
Where's your husband?
He isn't here.
Is he in the attic?
Of course not. May I pick up the child? She's frightened.
All right. Where's the key to the attic?
Don't be frightened, darling. It's all right.
Where is the key to the attic?
The grocer next door has it. We let him use it.
Mommy.
Darling, stop crying. Be a brave little girl.
I regret to say, madame, that I must arrest you.
But my child...
Your child will be sent to a German institution for the rearing of children.
No. No, don't take her. Don't take the child.
Don't compel me to use force, madame.
But the child is ill. She needs me. Look at her. If you were a father...
I am. But I am a German first. I do my duty. And so must you.
What will you do with the child?
She will have the finest care. If no charge is lodged against you, you will have her back in a few days. And if she is ill, as you say, she'll get the best treatment. We Germans love children. Here, give the child to me.
Paul,
I came as soon as I could, Denise.
you must tell John that the Germans will release the child if he'll give himself up. She's very ill.
What? Denise, I want you to promise me that you won't mention a word about the child or the Germans to Jean if you see or write to him. If he hears that they'll release her, he'll give himself up immediately.
I should hope he would. Why wouldn't he? There's no danger for him. The Gestapo told me that.
Of course they did. That's part of the act. But it's a lie. He'd be shot immediately.
I don't believe you. You're just saying that to... What
What makes you think that he'd be executed?
I'll tell you, but you must never repeat it. It was your husband who killed Odegaard. Now, do you understand? I must go. I shall try to arrange that you see Jean before he leaves for England.
Denise, I'm here.
Yes, John.
How is Anne?
Anne is dead.
When did she die?
Last night. The funeral is tomorrow. I'm going back tonight to be with her. Do you remember, John? When you began with the White Brigade, you took me into a room and pointed to her and said it was for her. It's all over now.
I should have paid. Not the child. Denise, we do not belong to ourselves or to each other anymore. We have to sacrifice. We have no right to give up. We've lost our child. How many thousands of Jews have seen their children killed before their eyes in Poland? Don't you see?
John, there's someone behind us.
It's only I, Paul. It's time for Jean to go, Denise.
Oh. Anne died last night, Paul.
I'm sorry.
Go, Jean. It's doing us no good to stay here. Please go. Let me go back to Anne.
Denise, I leave for England tonight.
I'm glad. Really, I'm glad. I've been so worried. But I'll be all right. I'll be waiting for your return.
Come, John. We must go.
Goodbye, my dearest. Be well when I come back.
Yes? What is it? What do you want?
There's Madame Denise Boucher outside who says she knows who killed the leader of the Gestapo, Domke.
Ah. So our latest announcement has had results. Bring her in.
Come in.
What do you know about the Domke affair?
The name of the killer.
What is it?
You're holding 100 hostages. You announced that they would all be shot unless the killer confessed.
That's right.
I'll tell you the name of the killer when I can be certain the hostages will be released.
I promise you that it will be done. Now tell me the man's name.
I'm sorry. I must actually see the order of release before I speak.
Very well. But I reserve the right not to release those who may be held on other charges.
All right.
Here? I'll write the order here. To be released immediately. Signed, General von Marincroft. There, madame.
I see.
The German army is eternally grateful to you and shows its gratitude for your high understanding of your obligation to society. And now tell me, who killed Domke?
I.
You? Do you take me for a fool? I'll countermand the order and get the truth out of you.
Don't excite yourself, sir. You have the truth. I've been in prison before, and no one has ever been able to get more than the truth out of me.
I hope you are aware that I've gone far beyond the bounds of generosity in this matter. Will you swear that you killed Hauptscharführer Domke?
Yes.
you realize you will get a death sentence for this?
Yes.
Well, be good enough to tell me how it was done.
Sometime after 9 that night, I threw a bomb into the cathedral.
You asked me to come, my child?
Yes, Father. I have something to tell you before I die. But I can only tell you under this secrecy of confessional.
What is it? Your secret will be safe with me.
I didn't kill Donkey.
Then why did you give yourself up?
To save the hostages.
I can understand that. But what was the reason for such a sacrifice?
They killed my child. And my husband was dead. He tried to escape to England. I learned later he was killed.
But even so, you could go on. You?
The Germans might as well have sentenced me to death long ago. I'm dying of tuberculosis. And they starved my daughter to death.
Let us pray, my child.
When you join the White Brigade, you give up everything. Family, honor, friends, money. They're all secondary. If you think you can't sacrifice everything, including yourself, to this work, you can still withdraw.
I'm ready.
You've just heard a radio play based on the recently published book, The White Brigade by Robert Goffin. The book was adapted for radio by Ruth Brooks of the NBC script staff, and participating players were Abby Lewis, Margaret Foster, Dolores Gillen, Les Damon, Ned Weaver, Barry Kroger, Joseph Boland, Edward Cullen, Peter Capell, Herbert Leonard, and Theo Getz. The music was arranged and played by William Meader, and the entire production was under the direction of Anton M. Leader. Next week, Words at War will present a program based on the life of George Washington Carver by Rockham Holt. Words at War is brought to you in cooperation with the Council on Books in Wartime by the National Broadcasting Company and the affiliated independent stations. This is the National Broadcasting Company.
Sing the glory of the coming of the Lord. He is trampling of the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored.
Are you listening, President Lincoln? That's your theme song, sir. And you'll be hearing it plenty during these next few days. Because you see, sir, we still celebrate your birthday here in America. And that's why tonight a small group of us have gotten together to bring you a birthday present. The kind of present we know you will like. It's a story, Mr. Lincoln. A story that's worth telling on this particular anniversary of your birth. Why, you ask? Well, you see, Mr. President, we're at war again. A group of men rose up in Europe to proclaim that they were going to enslave the world. They've said, in effect, that you were a liar, sir. They've said that all men are not created equal, that what they call the inferior and minority races can never amount to anything. And so we went to war with them, and we're beating them. And we're resolved that never again will their philosophy creep into the minds of men. For we know that it's not the color of a man's skin or the tenets of his creed that determine whether or not he can be great. And this story, one of hundreds we could tell you, proves that. It's the story of a man you freed from slavery, Mr. Lincoln, the simple story of a great American. The story of a man whose work in years gone by is now helping us to win this greatest of all wars. We hope you will like it, sir.
Glory, glory, hallelujah.
The National Broadcasting Company, in cooperation with the Council on Books in Wartime, presents the 35th in this Words at War series. Tonight we offer a character study of a great American, based in large part upon Rackham Holt's best-selling biography, George Washington Carver. Our story, told as it might be to Abraham Lincoln, will be presented by Frederick March, while Canada Lee will be heard as Dr. Carver.
It happened just about 60 days before you entered the White House, and about 5 years before you made that last visit to Ford's Theater. You remember? But it happened far away from Washington, sir. It was down in Missouri, in Diamond Grove, Missouri. There stood the Carver Plantation. It was rather a fancy name for the poor acres of Farmer Moses Carver, and life upon them was made no easier by the jungle law which then prevailed in Missouri. You remember that year of 61, Mr. President? The Missouri Compromise was a failure, and pro-slavery adherents in Missouri continued their bitter struggle with the Kansas Free Staters. Hatred was abroad, and bands of bushwhackers and guerrillas, riding under the black banner, were a scourge on the land. Plundering, pillaging, burning, and murdering. These were the order of the day. Well, there in a cabin of the Carver farm one evening sat a Negro slave woman, cradling her baby in her arms and gently swaying back and forth as she sang the infant to sleep. Came, laying the lash of their cruelty upon God's creatures. They came to the Carver farm and carried off the slave woman and her infant son, George. Farmer Carver gathered a rescue party and went off in hot pursuit. The trail led due south into Arkansas. And there, Farmer Carver caught up with the kidnappers and for the ransom of a fine racehorse, recovered the child. But the mother, she was gone, and she was never heard of again.
I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child.
It cost kind-hearted Moses Carver a racehorse valued at $300 silver to get that little black baby back, Mr. President. And I know that never in American history has $300 brought bigger returns to the nation. If you don't believe me, sir, wait and see. That wild ride into Arkansas gave the baby a desperate case of whooping cough. He recovered, but all through his childhood he remained a delicate little boy. So instead of putting him into the fields, the Carvers, his white foster parents, let him busy himself around the house and in the garden. And that's how he began a lifelong practice of talking to the flowers. Some people might call that just plain silly, Mr. President, talking to the flowers. But when that little boy had grown into a man, he explained it to himself this way.
In the beauty and aroma and variety of the flowers, I saw my first realization of the Creator's great truth. The truth that there's room on this earth for all, and that it's every creature's duty in life to serve the world and his fellow creatures to the best of his ability, to be as useful, to lend as much beauty to life as is possible. And that's why I've always talked to the flowers. They are the little windows through which man can see the face of God.
Now, wait a minute, Mr. Lincoln, sir. Don't go getting the idea that because this little fellow spent his spare time talking to the Creator through the flowers, don't get to thinking he was one of those prissy little children. No, sir. At times, he was a little hellion on wheels. Now, that's an expression that's probably new to you, Mr. President. What it means is that George Washington Carver he was a very human kind of boy. One of his youthful escapades he used to delight in telling was this.
You see, Mr. Carver, he used to go to bed when the chickens flew into the trees to roost, and I was supposed to stay in after dark. Mr. and Mrs. Carver used to tell me stories of Rawhead and Bloody Bones, who would catch little boys if they went out after dark. But in spite of this, I would sometimes steal out to the persimmon tree. Then when I went into the house, there Mrs. Carver would be waiting for me beside a jar of willow switches. When she started toward me, I used to open my mouth and yell till I sounded like a frightened steamboat whistle. And then she'd walk away rather than listen to that awful yelling. When she turned her back, I would sob and stuff a persimmon in my mouth. Then almost always, Mr. Carver would call down, "What are you doing to that poor child?" And she would say, "I haven't done anything yet." And he'd say, "Well, see that you don't do anything to that poor little fellow." So... consequently, I only got 2 lickings in my whole life. But it wasn't because I was so angelic, but because I knew how to yell. And those persimmons did taste awful good.
When he'd finished high school, George Washington Carver wrote to a college in Kansas and told them what his schooling had been. He said he was poor, but that he sure would like to go to college. And you know what, Mr. Lincoln? They wrote back telling him that they had decided to accept him. I guess you can imagine his joy at that. Well, sir, he spent all his savings on railroad fare and arrived at the university. He reported to the registrar's office spick and span and polished and clean as a new pin, a little flower in his lapel, and the joy of a granted prayer shining in his face. But the man said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. But you forgot to tell us in your letter that you're colored." Well, President Lincoln, if any heart has a right to well with bitterness, I think you'll agree it was young Carver's. He turned away and walked till he found a bench in the sun. Then he took a little flower out of his lapel, and the tears came to his eyes, and he closed his fist to crush the flower. But he stayed his hand before he had damaged the little thing he believed to be God's window. He looked into its petals and beyond them, and he said,
"Is that the way it's got to be, Mr. Creator? Is that the way it's got to be?"
Now then, Mr. President, maybe you won't believe this, but just then a young man came by and sat down beside Carver, and they got to talking. The problem was related, and the young man said, "You know, I'm a student at Simpson College at Indianola, Iowa. I've been doing some summer work here at the university. Why don't you go to Simpson? They might take you." And they did take him at Simpson, Mr. President, with the bigness of spirit for which that little college has always been famous. They welcomed the son of unknown slave parents. He spent a happy year there.
I was sorry to leave Simpson.
That's what Dr. Carver used to say himself, Mr. Lincoln. But he'd always add.
Yeah, but I was happy, too, that I was transferred to the Iowa State College at Ames, because it was there, 4 years later, that I obtained my bachelor's degree in science. It was there, too, in 1896 that I received my master's degree. And it was there that they were kind enough to give me a place on the faculty.
He never said what the Iowa State records revealed, Mr. Lincoln, that it was his amazing scholarship that won him that place on the faculty at Ames, the first time in history that a Negro was so honored. Later, they gave him more responsibility and honor. They put him in charge of the bacteriological laboratory and the greenhouse, and made him a professor in the Department of Systematic Botany. I want you to note something, Mr. President. All of this happened just a few years after your assassination. So you see, some of the lessons you tried to teach were learned. Your life, your struggles, your death were not in vain, sir. Mr. Lincoln, sir, isn't it peculiar how sometimes the stray little threads of circumstance combine to make a pattern that is easily recognized when the tapestry of the years has been woven? For instance, When George Washington Carver was at Ames, a little white lad named Henry lived there also. Now, this youngster used to delight in following the tall, slender scientist from the South, tagging him about as he cared for his flowers, and that little boy, now grown to manhood, often remembers the lessons he learned at George Washington Carver's knee. Lessons that gentleman chose to teach in parables. For instance, once the youngster asked, "Mr. Carver, why do you hold that little flower in your hand so tenderly, caressing it and looking into it like that?" And Carver said,
"When I touch this flower, I'm not merely touching a flower. I'm touching infinity."
"Infinity?" the boy murmured.
"Yes, Henry. I'm convinced that in the study of plants and flowers lie the answers to many of the world's problems. Flower in the crannied wall, I pluck you out of the crannies. I hold you here, root and all, in my hand, little flower. But if I could understand what you are, root and all in all, I should know what God and man is."
Is it any wonder, Mr. President, that the child was so devoted to such a tender teacher? But soon these friends were destined to part. One day the little boy came running up to Carver, who was working in the greenhouse, and he said with the impetuousness of youth, "Hey, my daddy says you're leaving here." And Carver said,
"That's right, Henry. I am."
"But why?"
Well, Henry, you see, it's like this. Down in Alabama, there's been a school established for people of my race. It's not much of a school yet, but, well, I think it will be one day, Henry. I think it'll be a school the whole nation will be proud of. It's called Tuskegee Institute, and the man who founded it, his name is Booker T. Washington. Well, he wants me to go there to teach. I'm to be head of the agricultural department.
And little Henry said, "But, Mr. Carver, my daddy says you'll be making a great sacrifice if you go to Tuskegee. He says the school is poor and that Mr. Booker T. Washington won't be able to pay you much. All up here at Ames, everyone likes you, and you're a respected member of the faculty." And then, Mr. Lincoln, the scientist taught the little lad another lesson, which the boy has never forgotten. He said,
Yes, I know, Henry. All of what you say is true. In material things, Tuskegee cannot offer me much. But it does offer me one thing that's beyond price. The opportunity to serve my people. That's important. I'd be happy if you would remember that. But maybe you'll find it easier to remember if you learn one of my favorite little poems. It goes like this, Henry. It isn't the cut of the clothes that you wear, nor the stuff out of which they're made, though chosen with taste and fastidious care, and it isn't the price that you paid. It isn't the servants that come at your call, whether many or few or none at all. It isn't the things that you possess. It's service that measures success.
And so, Mr. Lincoln, the threads were woven into the pattern. That little boy never forgot the poem, nor the lesson it teaches. And he grew up to be the Vice President of the United States. His name is Henry A. Wallace. So, Mr. President, George Washington Carver went down to Macon County, Alabama, to Tuskegee Institute, to be head of the agricultural department. But there was no agricultural department. There was no laboratory, no apparatus, and for experimentation, just 19 acres of the worst land in Alabama. He eroded, impoverished. His heart nearly broke. He needed help as he had never needed it before. So he went out into the woods and he talked to the flowers and to his Creator. And his breast was filled with anguish as he cried out,
Mr. Creator, what am I to do? I want to help my people. I want to help the whole South. Only you know how it needs help. It's impoverished because it's a one-crop country. Cotton, year after year, has ruined the land and the fortunes and the faith of its people. I must help them. With your help, Mr. Creator, I can help them. Of course, it would be easier, Mr. Creator, if I had a laboratory and some apparatus and maybe some good land.
And Mr. Creator answered him. He said, Start with what you have, little man. There's more around you than you see. And as for the land, make something of it. Never be satisfied. This you must do, for there are no greener pastures. Well, Mr. Lincoln, George Washington Carver did as he was told. He made tin cups into crucibles, old ink bottles into alcohol lamps, and used a heavy kitchen cup for his first mortar. A flat iron became his pulverizer, and the tops of old bottles were his beakers. And other equipment he made in like manner from articles found on the junk heap. Thus did he equip the laboratory in which he was to teach his students. Then the students said, "All right, sir, what do we do now?" And Carver said,
"Now, boys, now that we have our own laboratory, we'll create the laboratory in which we'll teach the whole South. Here, now, take these pails and baskets."
But, well, what do we do with them?
We'll go into the swamp and woods and bring them back full of muck and leaf mold. We're going to cover our land with it.
But, Professor Carver, it'll take us an awful long time to cover the whole 19 acres that way.
Yes, I know, boys, but time is something of which we have plenty. Let's use it wisely and work hard. You see, together we can show the South that its very worst soil can be made to produce. We can teach them diversified farming, show them how to plant vegetables, to smash pellagra. We'll demonstrate on these 19 acres how to produce a bale of cotton to the acre and how to double the yield of the sweet potato crops. And we'll show them that there's money in such things as peanuts. Together, boys, we can bring Southern farmers, both black and white, emancipation from the one-crop tyranny of cotton.
Walk together, children. Don't get weary. Don't get weary. Walk together, children. Don't get weary. Walk together.
Mr. Lincoln, I know that sounds like an awful lot of bragging and wishful thinking. If a man could accomplish all that, he'd get to be one of the greatest men in the South, if not in all America. And what did happen? Well, so many years later, when the House Ways and Means Committee was taking up the extremely important business of the Fordney-McCumber Tariff Bill, the man banged his gavel, or whatever the man does in the House Ways and Means Committee, and announced the names of 12 distinguished witnesses who would appear before the committee. He ended the list by announcing, "To represent the South and the peanut, Dr. George Washington Carver." Yes, Mr. President, George Washington Carver, a former slave, was to represent the South. Well, they sent a fellow down to a Union Station in Washington to meet him. When the train pulled in, a bent old colored man in a $2 black suit got down from the train and approached this fellow and said,
"Sir, I wonder if you would be kind enough to tell me how to get to the House of Representatives."
And the fellow said, "You need to be shown, old-timer, but I haven't got time to show you now. I'm looking for a great scientist from the South." Yes, I thought that would tickle your sense of humor, Mr. Lincoln. Well, the great scientist from the South found his own way to the House of Representatives. They told him he was the last speaker on the list and that he would be allowed just 10 minutes to make his plea to have the peanut protected by a high tariff. But once he started to talk, they wouldn't let him stop. They kept him on the stand for nearly 2 hours, and this, briefly, is the story he told them.
"Many years ago, gentlemen, I preached crop diversification to our southern farmers. Instead of cotton in the South, you began to see more and more peanuts growing. After a few years, there were so many peanuts that not all the circuses or peanut butter makers in the world could use them up, and the price dropped to rock bottom. After all those years of hard work, we were right back where we started from, in poverty. It looked to me as though there just wasn't any order in this old universe, so I decided to find out about it. I went out into the woods, and there among the flowers I spoke to the Creator. 'Dear Mr. Creator,' I said to him, 'please tell me the whole scheme behind the universe.' And the great Creator answered me,
You want to know too much for that little mind of yours. Ask for something more your size."
Then, Mr. Creator, tell me what was man made for?
Little man, you still are asking for too much. Cut down the extent of your request and improve the intent.
Well, then, will you please tell me why the little peanut was made? Please, Mr. Creator.
Ah, well, that's better. But even then, it's infinite. What do you want to know about the peanut?
Well, can I make milk out of the peanut?
What kind of milk do you want? Good Jersey milk or plain boarding house milk?
Good Jersey milk. And then, gentlemen, the great Creator revealed to me how to take the peanut apart and put it together again. And out of this process came forth these products, all of which I have here in these boxes and jars. Face powders, printer's ink, butter, shampoo, vinegar, dandruff cure, instant coffee, dyes, rubberoid compounds, soaps, wood stains, gasoline, cooking oil, a whole variety of things. All of them made from the lowly little peanut. All together, gentlemen, they represent a new industry worth $200 million. An industry the South needs. Please let us protect it.
Needless to say, Mr. President, the peanut was put on the tariff list. Oh, I suppose you're wondering about the honor accorded this son of a Negro slave in being invited to appear before an august congressional committee. But that was only one of the honors that came to him. He was made a Fellow of the Royal Society of Arts of Great Britain in 1916, and 6 years later was awarded the Spingarn Medal for the most distinguished service rendered by an American Negro during the year. In 1939, he was awarded the Theodore Roosevelt Medal for being a liberator of the white race as well as the black. Henry Ford built a fine laboratory in his honor and endowed the George Washington Carver School for Negro Youth on the Ford plantation in Georgia. And Thomas Edison invited him to join his staff at $100,000 a year. But Dr. Carver preferred to continue the work to which he had dedicated his life, bringing freedom from want to the people of the land he loved, both white and black. His peanut protein is today helping relieve the shortage of meat. The peanut oil replaces edible fats that now have gone to war. His research of the process of dehydration helped to give our soldiers and sailors the fresh food they need, though thousands of miles from home. From Macon County's multicolored clays, he made pottery, wallpaper inks, and house paints. He turned cotton, corn, and sorghum stalks into insulating boards, produced paper from the branches of wisteria, sunflowers, and wild hibiscus. He wove decorative table mats from swamp cattails, made table runners from feed and seed bags, using bright clay dyes for color. With the things God put in the earth, and the earth itself, Dr. Carver showed the poor how to make money and how to provide their homes with beauty. And yet the most beautiful and most expensive thing he ever owned himself was a black suit made out of homespun cloth, value $2. Not long before he died, Mr. President, and that was just about a year ago, by the way, a visitor came to see him at Tuskegee. The old man was working as hard as ever, and the visitor said, "Tell me, Doctor, why do you work so hard? You yourself never take any money for what you do, and as for fame, well, you have that and to spare." Well, the old doctor answered in his own typical way.
An old man going a lone highway came at the evening cold and gray to a chasm vast and deep and wide. The old man crossed in the twilight dim. The sullen stream had no fears for him, but he turned when safe on the other side and built a bridge to span the tide. "Old man," said a pilgrim near, "you're wasting your strength building here. Your journey will end at the ending day. You never again will pass this way. You've crossed the chasm deep and wide. Why build this bridge at evening tide?" The builder lifted his old gray head. "Good friend, in the path I have come," he said, "there followeth after me today a youth whose feet must pass this way. This chasm that has been naught to me, to that fair-headed youth may a pitfall be. He too must cross in the twilight dim. Good friend, I am building this bridge for him.
Mr. Lincoln, sir, I hope this story of mine hasn't rambled too much. Maybe you'd do us a favor, Mr. President. If you ever run across the old doctor, you might tell him that his hopes for the contributions his race might make to the good life are coming true. Tell him the Robesons, the Andersons, the Maynards, and the Waters are still lifting up men's hearts with the eloquence of their songs. Tell him the Julians, the Forts, the Drews, and the Hintons are still the slaves of all mankind in the fields of chemistry and medicine. Tell him the great poets of his race are following in the steps of Dunbar, and that its novelists and sculptors and painters are winning world acclaim. Yes, and tell him, too, that when the tyrants screamed their challenge, it was answered for his people by a young man named Joel Lewis, who in 1 minute and 10 seconds at Madison Square Garden vanquished the best the Nazis had to offer. And his answer was, "We're going to do our part, and we'll win, because we're on God's side." Tell him, Mr. President, tell old Dr. Carver, that that's why millions of his people now proudly labor at lathe and bench and assembly line, turning out the weapons that will save the way of life for which he lived. And that's why hundreds of thousands of their sons have entered the service of the Lord and are trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. Yes, and tell him, Mr. Lincoln, tell him that in the America both of you loved, God's truth goes marching on.
You've just heard a character study of Dr. George Washington Carver, based in large part on Rackham Holt's biography of the great Negro scientist, presented as the 35th program in our Words at War series. The script was written by Richard McDonough of the NBC staff. The storyteller was Frederick March, and Dr. Carver was played by Canada Lee, with the music by Juanita Hall and her singers. William Meader was heard at the organ, and the entire production was under the direction of Anton M. Leader. Words at War is presented in cooperation with the Council on Books in Wartime by the National Broadcasting Company and the independent radio stations associated with the NBC network. This is the National Broadcasting Company. Words at War.
From Lieutenant Colonel W.E. Dyer's account of the death march of Bataan, I quote, "2 more followed these. Then a 6th broke from the ranks. Japanese guards all along the line made no sign to prevent them. Just raised their rifles and waited for the 6th to scramble into the grassy ditch and go up on the opposite side, a few feet from the well. Most of the Filipinos fell at the first volley. Thus did our 5th day of the death march start with a bloodbath. I needed... What's that knocking? I needed all the strength... Somebody stop it, will you? We're on the air. Will somebody get them away or let them in or something? We're on the air. To continue.
We're on the air.
Men had been murdered behind me
here.
all night. But the deeds had been veiled by darkness.
It is true. The deeds veiled by darkness. Will you be
There had been
quiet?
nothing
No,
to
I
veil
must
the
tell you.
pitilessness
I must
and
tell them it
wantonness
is
of the
true. I
murders
know
I had
it.
just seen. I walked...
When they brought a Korean boy back to our cell and dumped him among us, we, his fellow prisoners, counted 5 cigarette burns on his neck.
Be quiet.
No, I must speak. It is important that I tell you how true it is. The things you are just learning. The things I knew for years. For I am a Japanese.
Japanese?
Yes. Taro Yashima, a painter, and a Japanese. Will you hear my story?
Words at War. The National Broadcasting Company, in cooperation with the Council on Books in Wartime, presents The New Sun by Taro Yashima, Japanese painter.
Where shall I begin? Tell you how poor I was? How my father was a village doctor? How I... No, that is not the way now. Let me begin with a spring evening in Tokyo, nearly 10 years ago. I was returning to my home, the little house in the working-class district. Through the soft dusk I walked, carrying in my hand a bouquet of daffodils. Why? For my wife. In the morning, she had told me I was to be a father once more. In the twilight, I walked along, talking to myself. No more weeping, my wife, for our dead baby.
No, Taro.
You're carrying toward life a new child.
Yes, Taro.
From our sorrow and bitterness and poverty, this child shall grow into a new world.
Oh, yes, Taro, yes. A new world. One we shall both paint. Yes, Taro.
This child shall be like a crocus. Out of the winter-cracked ground, like a crocus, our child shall grow and bloom. Whispering so to myself, I came to our little house. The lights were shining from it, but it was also still. Everything was silent in the lamplight. I stepped into my house. There were 3 men there. My wife was not.
Your wife couldn't wait for you.
She had urgent business.
Elsewhere.
Where is my wife? Where? What have you done with her?
We'll show you.
She is carrying our child.
You should have thought of that before.
You can't...
Can't we? Can't we?
I know who you are now. You are the Tokoka, the secret police. It's you who closed the workers' nursery without warning. It's you who are to blame because our first baby died.
Grab one of his arms, each of you, and pull him along.
The Tokoka. The Tokoka.
From the account by Lieutenant Colonel W.E. Dias of the Death March of Bataan, I quote, "Dawn of April 13th seemed to come in the middle of the night. Its magnificent colors and flaming splendor meant to us only the beginning of new sufferings. We averted our heads as the coppery light flooded our filthy prison.
I, too, sat in the prison, in filth. I, too, have averted my eyes from the heat of the sun streaming into a Japanese prison. I have been a prisoner of the Tokoka, a prisoner of war, the war which the government was making against its own people. Shh. I must speak in whispers, because there are guards outside. Hear them? If we are caught talking, if we pause in the business of picking lice off ourselves and exchange just one thin little word of comfort with each other, we are made to sit alone in the corridor. Alone. But, shh. I must speak to the old man beside me. I must know why he is here. Why, old man?
I had 40 yen in my pocket.
Shh. Not so loud. Is it a crime to have 40 yen?
They didn't think it was proper for me to have that much. My clothes were too poor.
And you? Why, you can't be more than 13. Why have they put you here? What did you do?
Me? I'm just a newsboy. And I peeked into the factory through a hole in the wall. But I didn't see anything. I didn't.
Shh. It's enough for them that you wanted to see.
I'm a garbage man. A Korean. That's enough against me, I know. But I stole a piece of zinc pipe. Just one.
Just one?
Yes. And what is that little piece of pipe to Japan's taking all of Korea? My country.
Oh, Manchuria. Why did they have to steal that?
You haven't told us why you're here.
I'm a painter. I drew pictures of the life that people live, of the war that is being prepared for them.
Then you're not really surprised to be here, are you?
If I am, I'll get over it. Perhaps I've been too surprised. Always.
But I'm a motorman. Just a motorman.
And I'm a member of a labor union in an iron factory. That's a terrible crime, isn't it? Don't answer, for it's yes.
They're carrying someone.
Pitch him in.
He's unconscious. How strange his face looks with that cut in it. The cut looks as if it were a mouth that would speak for him. Will it hurt if I brush the hair away from him? Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry.
He's coming too.
Oh, that is too bad for him. He was out of his pain. It is better to be unconscious.
No, old man, no, it is not. It is better to know.
There is a man who is made to sit holding his books each day till he falls over and his books fall all around him. Wouldn't it have been better if he never had known of books?
No. Let's see if we can't move this man a little. Help me, someone.
Oh, what did you do to him?
I only touched his arm. It's broken. They've broken both his arms.
Each of us will have to turn like him, won't we?
Yes, Motorman. Somewhere in this prison is my wife, carrying our child. The wife who wept for our dead firstborn, who could not be comforted by the words and the poems of the workers who were our neighbors. Somewhere in this prison, because she too painted the life about us.
Taro, they're taking a woman past our cell. She keeps looking in here, trying to... Oh, they caught her doing it. Why do you cover your face, Taro?
That is my wife.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Can you see where they're taking her?
Upstairs. Maybe I shouldn't have told you.
It is better not to know.
Our child was to be like a crocus, one that blooms through the rough earth left by winter into a new world of springtime, bringing joy to us. In a world without whips, without brutes, without poverty and needless death. A flower, like a cup for the sunlight.
Oh!
Did you hear? Old man, hold my hand. Boy, hold my other hand. That is my wife. My wife. Teach me something. Tell me something. I'm helpless. That is my wife who carries the crocus in her body. Squeeze my hands tight.
My fingers aren't very strong.
My hands are slippery with sweat.
Tighter, tighter. Hold my helpless hands. And you, helpless brain, think.
What can you think when your wife is being beaten?
I can think of the things she loved. Of the bright paint of the characters we painted once on our roof that read, "Come, study." new progressive art studio. Of the farmer who told us he wanted to be painted standing on top of a rock with his plow. Of the poor young worker who wanted to earn enough money to buy books. Did he ever earn enough? Of the child, our child, trying to live within her, trying to reach the world. Oh, child of mine, live, live. Come forth among us. Your father is helpless. Old man, boy, don't let go my hand.
From Lieutenant Colonel W.E. Dias' account of the death march of Bataan, I quote, "Mutterings about me brought me back to earth to look upon a new horror. I saw all eyes were directed toward an object hanging on a barbed wire fence that paralleled the road. It had been a Filipino soldier. The victim had been bayoneted. His abdomen was open. This was a Japanese object lesson, of course."
An object lesson, yes. The Imperial Japanese government gave its own people object lessons, too.
Taro, they're coming back. Don't look.
Is my wife?
They are dragging her. But her feet move. She's alive, Taro. She still lives.
Let me look at her.
Don't look, Taro. Let me tell you. I would not lie to you. She lives. She's lifting her head. Her hair hides her eyes so she cannot see. But she tried, Taro. Tried. I can see her broken teeth.
Her broken teeth?
She's smiling. Trying to...
Smiling.
She will bear your child. Believe us. Believe us.
Wife, do you hear? My unborn child, do you hear? I believe them. I believe.
You, Taro Yashima, you are wanted.
I am wanted?
Better than your wife, are you? Come on.
Let there be whips for me. There will be worse for those into whose hands they thrust the guns. For they will slay knife men like themselves in the name of the Emperor. They shall be cursed.
Get in there.
The room is cold. And the face of the man, the police officer who eyes me, the member of the Takoka, is like the face of a toad. The eyes.
Is this drawing yours?
What does it show?
A whole village in silence after refusing military drill. There are no people seen. Only a large, ridiculous figure who looks like an officer. A Japanese officer.
Are the strokes of the pen bold and free?
Bold and free? They are ugly, yes.
Does the officer look like a frustrated shark?
Yes.
And are the huts of the people hiding from him dark and bitter, like a litter of curled hedgehogs on a mud flat, one window in each shining like an open, wary eye?
Yes.
Then it is my drawing. It is mine.
And why did you draw it?
Because an artist must belong to the people. See what they do. Feel what they do. And that is the way the people feel.
You said something?
I said Excuse me. The tooth is loose.
Let me help it. You were saying...
I was saying... That is the way the people I know feel.
I will show you how the people feel. Guard!
Yes, honored sir. Yes, honored sir.
Strip him. Strip him to his naked, filthy skin. Let him see how the people feel. Make the lice dance on his body till they drop off dead. Let him see how the people feel.
And let me draw back now. As you draw back from the black print that told you how soldiers of my nation ran the soldiers of your nation, prisoners, through with bayonets, starved them, flogged them, massacred them. Let me draw back from my naked body, spraddled there on the floor. For I am being beaten, too, by Japanese soldiers. These men, holding the whips and blackjacks in their hands, have been cuffed and beaten themselves. They are the mannequins now of fascism. One idea alone is forced into their heads. Kill the other nations for the peace of the East. The peace I am getting at their hands, that they will get if they disobey. Disobey the toad who sits there grinning at my bloody writhings. I give that toad now a Western thought from a Western book, spoken in the Garden of Eden to a serpent. Between thy seed and mine, I will put enmity.
My wife. My wife. My unborn child. May you be born into the morning of the world. My son, come forth as your father fails. Under this whipping, this lashing.
From Lieutenant Colonel Dias' account of the death march of Bataan, I quote, Captain Burt had managed to secrete a long lump of sugar which he was eating. In a minute or two, Captain Burt had dropped back beside us and was holding out the sugar. We each took a bite and tried to give it back. Captain Burt shook his head. Split it, fellows, he said. I've already had more than that. I've never reacted so quickly to anything in my life. Strength flowed through me.
Taro.
What is it? Where am I? I know now. The same cell.
I didn't like to wake you.
I was dreaming. I saw a poppy growing out of the earth where I had planted it, in our backyard. It's hot in here. So hot.
The motorman is sick.
Yes, for a week, old man.
But now I think he's dying.
He must not die. No, we will do something.
But what is there to do?
Guard! Guard!
You are crazy, Taro.
What is it now? Did your worship crave something?
One of the men is dying. He cannot eat. He's dying.
That is too bad. Keep still.
You see, it is hopeless.
No, it is not. He must not die. Motorman, friend, brother.
Yes, Taro.
You shall not die.
I'll try not to. I don't want to. I'll try.
But you will pretend to. We will all pretend that you're dying. Listen,
Yes,
all of us.
Yes, Taro.
Whenever any of us sees a guard in the few minutes when we wash, when he's walking past our cell, when he sits out there tweaking hairs from his nostrils,
Yes.
when they bring in another prisoner, we say, a man is dying.
Yes, all of us.
Guard!
A man is dying! You can't put him in! Guard!
Why don't you leave me alone?
A man is dying in here.
Where is the dying going on?
Over here. Look at him. He will be dead soon.
Yes, dead soon. He will be dead.
Unless he has milk from now on, he will die.
Yes, he will die, God. Die.
Keep still.
Unless he has milk.
You see, Taro, it is hopeless. 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 Hopeless to ask for milk, Taro. They will never...
They're bringing supper. Will they...
Don't speak. Wait. Wait and see.
They're going to open the food panel. They're going to... Taro, I looked once for you. If the milk for the motorman is there, I can't look. You, Taro, tell us. tell us, the rest of us will shut our eyes. Taro, we cannot see.
Tell us, Taro.
In the opening, a whole bottle of milk is standing. Even in this darkness, it is white.
To the motorman. Give it to him.
Don't spill it.
Friend, motorman.
Yes.
It is your milk. Only don't drink it all at once, dying man, or they'll find out the fraud.
You must have some.
No. Take just a mouthful.
Swallow it. Swallow it.
Don't hold it in your mouth.
He will. It's hard for him.
Please swallow it. Please.
There. It was good, wasn't it, brother? The taste of milk in the mouth.
Thank you. Thank everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
It is the motorman, still awake, scratching with a bit of stone at the wall of our prison. Motorman, what are you doing?
I'm trying to scratch a poem on the wall, saying how I thank each all for the milk, how our sweat in this cell has mingled. I didn't mean to wake you.
We are all awake, motorman.
Thank you. Thank you.
A lump of sugar, a bottle of milk. Maybe this is a sample of the future world. They had let my wife go at last. The 9th month was on her. They let her go to have our child. I saw her just an instant, not to speak, only to look at her eyes as she passed.
Taro, our child shall be born.
You, my wife, you must live too.
I will bear our child, Taro.
This was said not in words, only a glance as she passed, as she dragged herself past my cell. The days passed. The deadly days. The voices you hear are those of some of the men trying to teach each other Esperanto. The man who knew it has left, and I am sitting here in his shirt. He stripped it from his back to give me. It is usual for departing prisoners to do this. No one is surprised anymore. But it is still prison. Is my son being born? Is he born? And into a world of terror and destruction? Yes, terror, war, destruction. Born among a people being destroyed by their rulers. I must get out. I must get out. Out of here.
It is true, Taro.
Very true.
You must get out, Taro.
But I...
Don't argue. We have all decided it. We have all agreed.
Yes, it is decided.
You must write a false confession for them, Taro. Then you can go free.
And my friends will think I have betrayed them.
No one will think that. They will know. Others have gone before you. Just that way. Taro, with your drawings, you can tell the world how fascisms eat at the very bowels of our nations. Drawing us up into an agony, like a beast's agony.
You can see your wife and...
Yes, Taro. Perhaps even your son. Write the confession. Tell them what they think they want to know.
Everything, except one thing.
What is that, old man?
Don't tell them. Don't confess about the bottle of milk.
No, Taro.
No, someone else might want milk someday, and then how would we get it?
Tell your son, Taro, when you see him, that we send him the greetings of his brothers.
and I was released. And as I walked forth, a guard...
For you.
What is it?
It came a month ago. A telegram. Read it if you want to find out what's in it.
A month ago. And I do not dare read it. But I must. My wife had safely borne our child. A son has been born to us. And I am out under the sunlight of heaven. The big, bright ball of light is over my head as I walk. As I run, bearing the greetings to my child from his brothers in the prison. Oh, great shining sun over my head, surely you will increase your brightness over me and over people everywhere. And so I, Taro Yashima, Japanese painter, came to this studio to tell you of my story and of the mingled sweat of my wife, my fellow prisoners, and myself in our struggles against the enemy fascism that beat to death your soldiers on Bataan. And I wish to thank the America which lets me talk and write and speak freely about events and people I shall never forget.
Taro Yashima, a Japanese artist, is now in this country. He is a member of the Japanese-American Committee for Democracy and a member of the Art Council of the Japanese-American Committee for Democracy. He's completing a series of cartoons on Japanese fascists and arranging for a third exhibition of paintings and cartoons. The dramatization of his book, The New Sun, was the 36th program of Words at War. The radio adaptation was written by Kenneth White. The material quoted from Colonel W.E. Dias' account of the Death March of Bataan is copyrighted and was used by permission of the Chicago Tribune and associated newspapers from coast to coast in which the Dias story is now appearing. The part of Taro Yashima was played by Everett Sloan. Next week, Words at War will present an adaptation of Assignment USA by Selden Menifee, an account of a reporter's travels throughout the United States. The music for tonight was arranged and played by William Meader. The production was under the direction of Anton M. Leader. This is the National Broadcasting Company.